A very good morning to all of you. On behalf of Indian section, Young Indian Theosophist is welcoming you to this every Sunday morning meetings. And today's topic, we know that it's Talks on the Path of Occultism, Volume 1. So before starting, let's start with universal invocation. O hidden life, vibrant in every atom. O hidden light, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May each who feels himself as one with thee know he is therefore one with every others. Let's observe silence for a couple of minutes. Welcome back. So today's topic is At the Foot of the Master, and it's the study class. So we will complete this session in four parts. So today, this first part, we will complete first part. So without wasting time, I hand it over to Brother Varun. Brother Varun, over to you.
Yeah, namaste. Good morning, everybody. So I welcome you all to today's session at the feet of the master. So today Aditya is a speaker, so he will be covering on discrimination from At the Feet of the Master from JK. So a brief introduction about Brother Aditya Thakur. So Aditya has completed his undergraduate in mechanical engineering into 2021 and professionally is into robotics. He's currently working in robotics as a so he is currently working as a research assistant in Triple IT Hyderabad. So and he was introduced to Theosophy by his family, by his father especially, and he joined TS in the year 2014, and he is a member of Shankar Lodge, Delhi. I think most of you might know his parents and sister. So Prachi, his sister, is also a member of TS, and she has also participated in few youth conference. Aditya was also part of the youth conference in 2018 and even the last year youth conference in Adyar. So I met him personally. He had been to Bangalore City Lodge also a couple of times, so I know him a bit personally as well. His favorite topic is also JK, so glad that he has taken his topic. He has chosen JK's topic for today's session. Yeah, I wish him all the best, and over to you, Aditya.
Yeah, hi, just a minute, I'll share the screen. Perfect. Is it visible? Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, perfect. Hi, so today we're going to speak about At the Feet of the Master. And before we go into the book as in depth, there's something which I read, which G.S. Arundale wrote about the book, which I want to tell everyone. He said, in many ways, this little book that we're going to study together is the most important gift the world has received for hundreds of years. He said, for the words are from the lips of the mighty teacher, which to the people in Theosophical Society, the person who is also known as Master KH. So just to keep that in the back of the mind as we go into this book. So the teachings contained in this book, the things which the JK has written, these were given to him by his master for preparing him for his initiation. So the things that are written in the book, they're that much in depth, and that's what we have to keep in mind when we are reading it. So one important thing to keep in mind is in the present times, when we are reading the teachings in this book, they're very much relevant as they were, let's say, 100 years back, which might not be true for a few other subjects in the TS, which are more related to social works. But this subject is still as relevant as it was maybe 100 years back. And the things that are being talked about, that we have to walk upon the path. And the path that is being talked about, we have to follow that in day-to-day life. So when we are trying to do these things which are written in the book, we have to do it right now as we go through life. And it's probably much harder as compared to, let's say, going out somewhere in a monastery and just simply abstaining from everything. When you're in this world and you're seeing all those challenges, and then you're able to address them and live your life in the most theosophical parlance, if we can call it, that's the biggest challenge, and I believe that's what we all have to do. It is probably much harder, and I kind of believe that it's hard. That's why we have to do it. If it was easy, maybe someone else can take that up. So the picture of JK in this book is like when he was really young, and probably that's when he wrote it. So there's a beautiful message in the book when it starts. It says, "To those who knock," and it's very beautiful. So when we're talking about uh, to those who knock, what does that mean? So when I thought about it, I felt usually we have two kinds of lives. One is inner life, in which we sort of try to study spirituality and all that stuff when we try to improve ourselves. And there's outer life which we're living in terms of our careers and all the things we have to do in order to live. So I felt when that inner life sort of starts reflecting in our outer lives, in our workplaces, in how we talk to people and all that, when they sort of start merging together, that's when we are sort of knocking on that door, metaphorically speaking. When one becomes serious about that inner life, he or she, they're knocking on that door to that inner chamber, asking to be admitted into that inner life. So to knock sort of demonstrates by one's actions intent, and if the knocking is sincere, it will be heard, which is when you truly value these teachings. So it's a beautiful message, I felt. So broadly speaking, there are four things which have been talked about in the book. The four qualifications, which are discrimination, which we're going to talk about today. Then it's desirelessness, good conduct, and love. The three others are going to be talked about later on in the future sessions. And we're going to focus more on discrimination today. So when the book starts, the first lines are these. The first of these qualifications is discrimination. And this is usually taken as discrimination between the real and the unreal, which leads men to enter the path. So before I get into these, I also went through another book, which is called Viveka Chudamani. It was written by Shankaracharya, and it was written way before even At the Feet of the Master. And it has similar teachings. It has all the four things which have been talked about in At the Feet of the Master as well. So in that book, Shankaracharya says that sages have spoken about it way back. So when he's speaking it, when he's talking about it, he says it's been talked about way back, even when he is telling about it. He said it's not something that he enunciated for the first time. So he also reinstated that for the people of his time. And these are the teachings which were well known to spiritual sages. Where I mean to go with this is all part of the ancient wisdom. It's always been there. It will always be there. The only thing is we have to become more receptive in order to receive these gifts. And of course, Master KH did the same thing for Krishnamurti in 1909, and later it was published in 1910. And discrimination as a quality is very important, and it has been listed first in the 4 of these qualifications. And as we go into discrimination, there's one thing which we have to keep in mind, that very often things sort of get lost in the translation. So discrimination, the word, it's come from the Sanskrit word. So Vivek is the word it's been translated from. So when we translate some word in another language, very often some subtleties are lost. Some new meanings are added, which correspond to the new language. So this is also something to keep in mind when we go into this. So there are different ways in which this word Vivek has been translated in English. Some have described it as discrimination. There are many other words. So one other word that I came through was insight. So what I like about that word discrimination is it sort of has a strength associated with it. You have to discern what's the right thing to do, and you have to act upon it. So another thing to keep in mind is even those who live good and holy lives do not usually strictly follow all these precepts laid down for them. In religious matters, people seem to think that sort of a vague approximation to the instructions given is quite sufficient. But in occultism, that will not be the case, I feel. We must take it as a science. We must practice each and every step that we are, each and everything that we are being said in the book. So we start with this particular line, that discrimination has to be made between the real and the unreal, which leads men to enter the path. Now, we're going to talk more about real and unreal later on. So we'll talk about that later. And later it says that it is this, but it is also much more. It has to be practiced not only at the beginning of the path, but at every step of it, every day until the end. Essentially, what I understood from this particular line or this particular paragraph was, we have to unceasingly follow the things which are being said. It's not like we kind of read it and we move on and we don't follow it. So if we are to truly appreciate these teachings, we have to listen to it and follow it in the very earnest sense. So it says, in all the worlds, there are 2 kinds of people, those who know and those who do not know. And later it talks about what's thing that we have to know. It says the thing to know is the God's plan of evolution. And it doesn't matter what religion you belong to, what race, what religion, none of that matters. What matters is that God has a plan, and that plan is evolution, which we have to understand. So when we say that whatever country you belong to, religion or race, whatever, that doesn't matter, what that means is, it means that to be patriotic, to admire your own race, to sort of feel that you owe something to it, and to be ready to serve it, are all good things. No doubt about that. But we have to take care of the things that we are not harming others in the process of our own beliefs. So we have to take care that we show our admiration by, we do not show our admiration by depreciating the others. A permanent relation is to humanity as a whole. We are citizens of this world, and confining ourselves to one particular group, whether it be it in form of a country or a race or religion, that would not be such a good thing. So patriotism can be good, if we are helping the others in the way, sort of like in a family, we are trying to do good for others, like our brothers, sisters, whoever is in our family. We try to do what's best for them. So in a way, country or religion can be like a bigger group that we try to practice that good on. But at the same time, when we are going against someone because we belong to something, is not the right way to approach it. And exactly, like it's the precisely same with religion. Uh, each of the religion emphasizes certain virtues, and all are necessary for the progress of mankind. If we have this sort of thing in the back of the mind, it's very easy to understand where it's all going. So, sort of like, let's say, as a child, when we grow up, we abandon our toys as we keep growing. At the age of 3 or 4, we like to play with, let's say, mud. We like to play with dolls. But when we get a little older, those toys, those soldiers, the small action figures, these all they don't make sense. No one told you to stop using them. It's just that you've started growing above them. So in a very similar way, I felt this particular line in the third paragraph. When once a man has seen that and really knows it, he cannot help working for it and making himself one with it. So when we slowly progress in this path of evolution, and when we have seen things which are everlasting, which are real, then we don't desire things which are unreal anymore. Sort of like a child growing up and realizing the toys don't matter to him anymore. It's not bad that we played with those toys before. It's just that we got above that. And it's very beautiful the way they've put it, that it's not that we have to sort of hate them, like hate them for not being on our side of the things. It's just that we have to understand where they're coming from. And I thought it also relates to the second object of the TS, that we have to form a universal brotherhood of humanity without distinction of race, caste, creed, sex, and color, which is being implied in the second line. Now it says, those who are on his side know why they are here and what they should do, and they are trying to do it. All the others who do not know what they should do, and so they often act foolishly and try to invent ways for themselves which they think will be pleasant for themselves, not understanding that all are one, and therefore only what one wills can ever be pleasant for anyone. So again, the thing that is being talked about is from that higher perspective, from the perspective of oneness. The fact that those who do not know often act foolishly makes it true that the wicked man is always to be pitied, not to be disliked or hated. What impresses itself upon most people generally is that he's maybe acting in a way of selfishness for his own interests, as he thinks. And they are a little apt to forget his ignorance of the fact. And what we have to keep in mind is that we have to always have that oneness as a central figure in the back of our mind. So if we look from that perspective, then it becomes very simple, I feel. Like, even if they're not doing it like how we want them to, like how they ideally should be doing, maybe they'll learn and maybe they'll get on the path eventually. So the oneness that we're talking about here is, I felt, being talked about from, let's say, a perspective of universal mind. It is important to think from that particular perspective, I felt. Now, there's a lot that has been talked about between the real and the unreal. So next, I think we'll get into it. Right. So real and the unreal. So the biggest and probably the biggest bracket of discrimination is discrimination between the real and the unreal. And so what they've written in the book is they're following the unreal instead of the real. Until they learn to distinguish between these two, they have not ranged themselves on the God side. And so discrimination is the first step. So it's for each of us to ponder upon whether we have ranged ourselves on the God side or not. But talking more about discrimination here, discrimination between the real and the unreal. I personally felt this was something I can ponder upon for hours, for weeks, maybe. Uh, so very briefly, At the Feet of the Master touches upon this real and the unreal part. So we'll talk about that. At the Feet of the Master touches more upon the variations of the real and unreal, which we'll talk about later. So I was also reading Secret Doctrine in parallel a while back. And something which struck with me when I was reading the real and the unreal part was the first fundamental proposition, Secret Doctrine, fundamental proposition. I've not put the whole thing here, but I've only put the important part. That an omnipresent, eternal, boundless, and immutable principle on which all speculation is impossible, since it transcends the power of human conception. There's a lot more to it. But HPB has basically described the ultimate reality in terms of these things. The world that we live in, it's an emanation from that absolute reality. It's a periodic emanation, according to esoteric philosophy. From a human standpoint, it feels forever. It lasts for millions of years. But against the reality, it's a flicker of an eyelid. It's all relative. There is chronological time and then there's physiological time, which is very relative. We live in a forever changing world, which is referred to as Maya. But Maya, when we use that word, we are not specifically calling it illusion. It's appearance, but not illusion. Like a film we're watching. Let's say you go to watch a movie. Essentially, it's just flitting images of light. But during the movie, you get so involved in it that if it's a comedy, you're laughing. If it's a romance, you're shedding a tear. If it's a thriller, you're on the edge of the seat. But you get so involved that you care for characters deeply. You love the hero, hate the villain. You care about the outcome. But all the time, you know it's just a movie. And in the end, what happens is the lights come on and you see a big black screen. Does it mean it was not real? Psychologically, it was very real. You were so immersed in that film, and so too in life. This is a very real world in that sense. If you don't believe that, step out in the world and step out on the road and see if a car hits you. Does that hurt? I'm sure you will get hurt if you survive. But this is not what is meant by real and unreal. Yes, physical world has laws, just like Newtonian mechanics. You have to follow them or face the consequences. But in terms of metaphysical standpoint, it is but a passing shadow. To the soul, it is all unreal. Maybe when you die and you leave the body, it will be like a dream. It was very real while it was occurring, but when it was over, it was nothing. Does that mean you can discount the importance of this life? Probably not. It matters a lot because you cannot just jump out of the matrix, as if we call it that. It has to be realized that you are in a matrix, which can only happen while you are present in the matrix and yet have a vision and understanding which extends beyond this matrix. So I remember something famously that Paul Tillich said. He said, all visible things have a surface. Surface is that side of the things which first appears to us. If we look at it, we see what things seem to be, Yet, if we act according to what things seem to be, we are often disappointed. Our expectations are frustrated, and we sort of try to penetrate below the surface in order to learn what things really are. And I think meditation takes you below the surface.
Brother
Profound
Aditya,
thinking.
sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you, but
Yeah.
we are in the real and unreal slide only. So you have not moved the slide, or?
Oh no, I'm still referring to the real and unreal.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Yeah, so deep thinking and observation takes you below the surface. Um, so yeah, in essence, everything which exists in the finite world, whether the lifetime would be millions of years, it's still unreal. So even the sun, which sustains and nourishes the solar system, uh, this happens throughout the universe. Some keep dying and keep coming up. So it's still unreal. So now we get into the variations of the real and the unreal. So there's a line which I'll repeat, which I saw at the feet of the master. It says, uh, but even when the choice is made, you still have to remember that of the real and unreal, there are many varieties. And discrimination must still be made between the right and the wrong, the important and the unimportant, the useful and the useless, the true and the false, the selfish and the unselfish. So we'll get into each of them now. Right and the wrong. Okay. So it says, do not mistake your bodies for yourself, neither the physical, nor the astral, nor the mental. So oftentimes what happens is when there's something which has to be done. For example, you have to go and get something done which is important, but physical body wants to take rest. So in those times, we have to tell ourselves that the work has to be done, and it is uh, us who should be controlling the bodies, and we should be commanding them what and when to do. And it's important here to know that we should not mistake our bodies for ourselves. We are separate from bodies, and when and where the work has to be done, we have to employ them in that particular way. So same as physical body, astral body has its desires. It likes to be angry, to say sharp words, and many more. Not because it wishes to harm you, but because it likes those violent vibrations, and it likes to constantly change them. And mental body sort of tries to think about itself, uh, more about that selfishness aspect. So it's important to know these bodies have a certain nature to it. So we have to take care of that, and at the same time see what's required in the world and do it according to that. So there's another line which comes in at the feet of the master. It says, uh, your body is the horse upon which you ride, and we have to take good care of it, because without taking good care of our body, we won't be able to do the arduous task of preparation. But at the same time, we have to know we are not this mind, but it is ours to use. It should be us who controls the body, not that we get controlled by it. And something which really struck with me when I was reading this book, even a long time back, was this particular line: between right and the wrong, occultism knows no compromise. So this I felt I can apply in all parts of my life. Many times, what happens is we personally know what is right or wrong, but we sort of undermine that. We think it's a small thing. Maybe we can let it go and we can look on to the bigger things. But what happens slowly is those small things become big things, and big things slowly become small things. So we have to practice that on each and every step in our life as we are going through with it. And at whatever apparent cost, that which is right you must do, that which is wrong you must not do. I personally felt this was a very important lesson for me. So, yeah, I mean, when I was reading this book, I felt each of the lines was so in depth that if I try to go into each of them, it will take more than just one session, I felt. But yeah, so I'm trying to summarize this all briefly. Next, we move on to important and the unimportant. So it says that we must discriminate between the important and the unimportant, firm as a rock where right and wrong is concerned, yield always to others and things which do not matter. It's a very important lesson, I feel. So it sort of tells us we do not have to be a fanatic, that that we do not have to stress on small things which do not matter as much. So the difference between a fanatic and a wise person, I feel could be that fanatic never knows the difference between the important and the unimportant. So he will not yield in things which do not matter. Therefore, he sort of rubs on people's fur up all the wrong way. So it's important to know what's important in that particular circumstance, which will slowly come with discrimination. And we must distinguish not only the useful from the useless, but also the more useful from the less useful. And an example that they've given here in the book is to feed the poor is a good and noble and useful work. Yet to feed their souls is nobler and more useful than to feed their bodies. Because any rich man can probably feed the body, but only those who can feed the soul. But there are only less who can feed the soul. If you know it is your duty to help others to know, you should do them all the time. And there's an interesting line that I came across when I was reading the commentary on At the Feet of the Master. Annie Besant says, the acts of the politician may loom large in the eyes of the world, but in the eyes of the master, it may be no more than a dust in the wheel of time. So what you think as important, you must do. Doesn't matter what other people think. Doesn't matter what the ignorant may say or think. You must do what you think is right, according to your discrimination capacities. Coming on to useful and the useless. So it says, however wise you may be already, on this path you have much to learn. So much that here also there must be discrimination and you must think carefully what is worth learning. And again, I feel these are all very, very practical things. When we are, let's say, reading something, what we can do is we can see what is, worth learning, in the sense that I personally feel I try to learn and study things which I'm able to, implement and try to help other people around me with. Something I personally feel which is more practical and which will help me help other people is more useful in the current circumstance. And I can definitely read on and learn more things later on. So that's my interpretation of what was said here. And in the book, they also say that the God is wisdom as well as love. And the more wisdom you have, the more you can manifest of Him. Study then, but study first that which is which most helps you to help others. Work patiently at your studies, not that men may think you are wise, not even that you may have the happiness of being wise, but because only the wise man can be wisely helpful. So what's important is to know that we are learning to help the others. And this is an important thing to have in, again, back of our mind. And the thing is, however much we wish to help, if we are ignorant, we'll be doing more harm than good. So it's important that when we are trying to help someone, we first understand if we have the capacity and the means to help them. Otherwise, we might be doing more harm than good. So it's an important thing to do as well. Now, true and false. You must distinguish between the truth and the falsehood. You must learn to be true all through in thought and word and deed. So just to break this down a bit, there are three things which it's said that we have to focus on in thought, word, and deed. So in terms of thought, um, I personally think we should not hold any thought just because many other people hold it, or because it's been, let's say, believed for centuries, or because it's written in some sort of a book. We must sort of judge it by ourselves. If we think it aligns with our frame of mind, it aligns with what we believe, what we think is true in our daily life, then we should follow it. Because if we simply follow what someone else has said, or what someone else maybe believes in, then we are blindly following them. And that's sort of a belief. And belief, I remember the JK quote all the time. He said, belief has no place where the truth is concerned. So we have to find it out for ourselves, what is true for ourselves. So another thing which I thought I can relate to real life is that in general terms, politicians, business people, uh, and in general, many people as well, that when they sort of cheat on their taxes and all that, these things are sort of considered okay. I mean, they're not considered bad if you're cheating on your taxes and all that. So big lies, little lies, but still a lie. So when you know it, even in the subtle forms, we should try and correct it. So getting into the word part, even when we're speaking, we should be careful and conscious when we're speaking, whether we are not saying something which is untrue. And uh, a very simple form of that falsehood, I felt, was exaggeration, which was mentioned in the book. And I think we all do it, myself included. It's distortion. We exaggerate, let's say, our values, faults of other people to make them look worse. But if we are really serious about these teachings, we have to watch it. It takes a while to consciously watch it, but with observation, I feel we can eliminate that. Then we are serious about walking upon this path, about discipleship. We have to watch every word we say, because everything has consequences. For instance, I don't think a disciple would go around saying everything, or everything is, let's say, awesome. That's a word we have started loosely, sort of started associating with everything we say in life. And the more we say it, the more we sort of dilute the meaning of that word, I feel. So yeah, we have to be true in thought, word, and deed, all three of them. And the important thing to remember is we have to think for ourselves. We do not have to put that on someone else, because essentially it has to be our own growth, and we have to take responsibility for it and do it ourselves. Now, coming on to selfish and unselfish. So it says you must discriminate between the selfish and the unselfish, for selfishness has many forms. And when you think you have finally killed it in one of them, it arises in another as strongly as ever. So personal vanity, desire for recognition, pride, accomplishments, uh, material wealth. There can be many forms in which selfishness displays itself. As someone who's trying to walk on the path, you might be aware of one area where you have this weakness. You must work upon it, against it, and try to eliminate it. But what happens most of the times is you try to kill it in one form, and it pops up in many other areas. kind of like Hercules chopping heads of Hydra. One goes, another one appears. For example, for most of the people on spiritual path, they have given up and they've sort of eliminated this thirst for the material wealth to a good amount of extent. But at the same time, you've acquired a personal sort of a spiritual vanity that see how I've progressed. I must be really proud of myself. And these are like the subtle things which we all can focus on in our lives and know where we can eliminate them. And no one else can understand it better than ourselves. A few ways that which were mentioned in the book itself to deal with this was we can use devotion. That is one of the most effective ways. Another is service. Service to others. It can be, let's say, your mom, your dad, someone in your family, in your career. If you're into scouts, that can be a thing. It can be many things, as helping the retired people or feeding the poor. You should look at your own capabilities and see, I can be of service in this particular area. And I think if we put our whole heart into that thing, we become really good at it. And when we are sort of servicing others, I feel when we are putting our whole heart into it, we sort of forget about ourselves. And that's how, we are able to eliminate that little bit of selfishness, one step at a time. And we are being devoted to something higher than ourselves. We are getting out of our bubble. So many ways to explain that thing. But essentially what we are doing is we are forgetting about ourselves and looking at the bigger picture. And devotion is just like that. We sort of devote ourselves to something higher. And in a way, we forget about ourselves. Thank you.
Thanks, Aditya. It was a detailed presentation, again with a lot of examples that you have quoted. It all started with the discrimination of real and unreal, and you also touched upon the variations of the real and unreal, like the truth and false, the right and wrong, usefulness and uselessness, and the selfishness and unselfishness. So touched upon a lot of things in detail, giving a lot of examples. But the two aspects when we're thinking of this in a technical way, I mean, how we use it in our day-to-day life, these things become very straightforward. We can understand these things straight away. But when we think of it in a spiritual aspect, the person who is on the path, and these things become more and more difficult. We feel that although we understand all this superficially at the surface level, but when we get into the depth, we can find ourselves at fault on so many occasions. So it's always a matter of choices and consequences. So at every choice, there is this discrimination. So what do you do? Because once you have made out of that discrimination, once you make a choice, you will have to face the consequences, right or wrong, good or bad, in the later stage. So in that aspect, so each and everything that we do, this discrimination plays a very vital role, and I think you have touched upon it, and a lot of examples you gave. But this is a kind of a topic where each one of us, when we keep reading on it, depending on which stage we are or at, or when we are reading, maybe after 2-3 years, if I read, still there is something to pick up. If we have that, it is that kind of a subject. Yeah, and I can open up If anybody has any questions or anything to add, what Aditya has already added, you can feel free to do it. Any questions, you can please ask us so that we can discuss again in depth. Again, we have enough time. He has covered it. Although we can go on speaking on this, but I think discussion makes more sense. It can give more clarity to everybody. Any questions, please feel free to ask. Yeah. No questions? Yeah.
I'm Selvan.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah. I would love to know that important or unimportant, shall we seek the help of others? The
Can we
question
seek
is,
the- yeah, can we
Yeah.
seek the help of others to know whether it is important or unimportant?
yeah,
So
In the-
I personally, yeah, do you want to answer that, Varun?
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So when I was reading the important and the unimportant, I felt this is one of the difficult things to discern, because many a times in life, when things are a bit different in terms of let's say something that you're doing right now, it requires a certain thing which you have to do right now. But so important and unimportant can be different in different times in our lives. So it depends. For example, if I'm doing a research project and I know my professor knows it much better than I do. So for this particular thing, I'll approach him like, okay, tell me what's important and what's less important, then I'll prioritize it that way. So it's much easier to do in these worldly things. But when it comes to inner life, when we are questioning ourselves, then I feel it's much better if we try to trust our own judgment, because it might be wrong, but we learn something and later on we'll be able to correct it. But that's my understanding.
thank you.
We can ask others, but what happens is when we ask others whom we feel that person knows better than us, so when we approach them and ask us, they might tell us something, but we will conclude, we should not decide that whatever you said is right or wrong. We should always keep it as, we should always keep that as what you say, an hypothesis. No matter in any subject, spiritual subject, you keep it as an hypothesis. Do not decide yes or no, and until you get the answer for that yourself. I think it's better you keep looking for that answer. You can take things from wherever you want, but don't decide anything and stop. Yes, this is right or this is wrong, or this is important or not important. You keep it as a working hypothesis. You keep working on it, and you keep reading, you keep acquiring knowledge yourself. You apply it to your own life. So then whatever you have read, whatever you have understood from others, and whatever you apply it to your life, so you put all together and see. So my understanding was this, I applied it in my life, and the outcome is this. So when you club all that, and then you can analyze for yourself much better. I think it's not good or not bad to take the help of others or seek others' advice. But finally, it boils down to your own understanding based on your situation. Yeah. It keeps changing. Again, the same question, if you ask maybe 5-10 years down the line, and you might get a much different answer than what you have got today. But it keeps evolving. As long as you're in the right direction, I think it's fine. Yeah.
Thank you. My take now is rely on your own inner judgment and take a call for it. Inner judgment could be again myself deciding important or seeking help. Okay. My inner judgment says it's important, I should go to it. If I feel it is unimportant, maybe I will think of other situations clearly and try to understand myself. If not available, maybe I will seek outside help. That's what my understanding today. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Sir, am I audible?
Yes.
I am B.S. Babu.
Yes, sir.
See, I'm just trying to think, I'm trying to understand what Aditya has spoken. We discriminate something and label it real or unreal. Is my understanding correct? Hello?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah,
Like,
can
what?
We discriminate, or rather, I discriminate something, some entity, and label it real or unreal. Is my understanding correct?
I actually think in life we mostly label everything that we see as real, but that's probably unreal. But I think that's what we do it in life.
See, we discriminate about something and
Yeah.
come to a judgment or conclusion that it is real or unreal. That is how I understood it. If that is true, then I would like to know what is it that we are actually discriminating, the nature of that thing which we are discriminating.
I take the question.
Please,
Hello.
please, sir. Please, sir,
Yeah.
please.
See, you are going by the meaning of the word discrimination. Discrimination means separating something from what we do or what we have or what we think. Okay, that is
Yes,
the
yes.
meaning of it. That's what Mr. Aditya has told very clearly. Discriminate between real and unreal. But whether it is real or unreal, you may think real, it may be unreal. Okay, that is where the confusion for your questions comes. Okay, the literary meaning of discrimination is correct what you have understood. Discriminate real and unreal. That is what he is trying to say. But whether whatever you know is real or unreal is up to us. Okay, but most of the things what we see are unreal, which now we learn to understand, and so that we understand the real thing by over a period. That's what I talked about evolution. Okay, from now on, if you try to deep understanding of what is real, or he gave some examples also. So that's what start discriminating real and unreal as per the knowledge you have right now. It may be wrong, it may be right. So your understanding is correct, but practicing that real and unreal is going to be a challenge for us with the limited knowledge we have. Thank you.
Yes, sir. You are right, sir. I am trying to understand the precise meaning of what is meant by discriminating and what is it that we discriminate. And what is that we mean when we say that it is real and what is unreal? Thank you, sir.
Discriminating is between real and unreal. When we are white, when somebody we say they are black, that is discrimination. That is what our understanding, whole understanding of lifetime. Likewise, you are discriminating the unreal from your real life. Okay, that is the meaning of it. Real discrimination. Discrimination is you are saying something not unworthy. You are not part of it. They are not part of it. That's what we are trying to say. Discrimination. Here a dictionary meaning, if you go, discriminating means making something lower than what you assume as your standard. Okay. Here we are trying to discriminate unreal.
So what you are saying actually implies that discrimination is possible only after having a knowledge of what is real and what is unreal.
With a limited knowledge, now you have.
Okay.
That we have.
Doesn't mean we have the full knowledge right now.
Okay. Okay. The talk is very enlightening, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Just to add on the unreal and real part, I think what I understood was unreal is everything in manifestation. basically everything which has a beginning and an end might be a short existence of, let's say, 2 seconds or a few years or millions of years. But from a standpoint of metaphysics, few millions of years is also a small lifespan. Also, real doesn't change. With time, even let's say the stable, steel, iron, everything changes, it rusts. Some things might be relatively permanent, but in the absolute sense, no. That's my understanding.
Yeah, yes, and we understand that also. Thank you.
Any other questions for discussion? Vimalji, Catalina. Yeah.
Hello.
Any question?
Hi,
Yeah.
I'm Prema here. Just want to thank you so much for this talk, and the discussion on real and unreal is very good. This is a very small book, but if you see the Path to Occultism, Volume 1, it is a 400-page book giving the explanation of this. And I reread it again and I mean, I study that book again and again. We understand a lot. Like Sir asked, discrimination itself, in Tamil, we call it Pagutarivu. The knowledge to know what is real and unreal comes through knowing what is true, what is false, what is important, what is unimportant. If we try to slowly choose each and everything based on these principles itself, we will know what is real and unreal slowly. We think we are going to live for a long time and amass wealth. We are not in moderation. We don't know what is how much we should earn, how much we should study. In everything, we have to apply moderation. If we have that knowledge, slowly we will be able to understand what is real and unreal. And in the explanation, change, he talks about change. We think this world is going to be there, so we earn a lot, we study a lot, we become more materialistic. It may be real in this particular world, in this life, but actually we have many lives. So that understanding is very important to discriminate. Should you go to a party or to a lecture? These are all small. Should we give this bribe or not? It is very difficult for us. Slowly we have to change. We have to be in the path to occultism, to self-realization, to grow ourselves. That is what is insisted in that explanation book, Path to Occultism. And this is like a scorecard. I actually touched many books in theosophy, but I felt practically I'm not applying things. What after studying for 3-4 years, what have I grown internally? It's not a degree. There is no degree. So then I realized, I studied even the secret doctrine. The easy parts are there even in secret doctrine. I studied that. The beginning will be difficult. Then only I took the book, How to Study Theosophy. There is a small book. If you see there are very good principles in how to study theosophy, where we have to start from the basics. So for that basic, the 3 books, At the Feet of the Master, Voice of Silence, and The Light on the Path. Light on the Path is also very heavy. It may be a small book, but we can't reach that unless we try these 2 principles. So At the Feet of the Master is a scorecard. It's like a scorecard for a beginner. That's what I realized, and I studied that, and I have made notes also. I would like to share it probably in the next session. We can start with that slide, revise that, and see how we can we have made small decisions in our life. We can discuss that also and start over there. I don't want to take too much of your time because we are at the end of the session. So maybe next session I will add on to it.
Sure. Thanks for your feedback. But yeah, as Aditya was giving an example of a child, right? So child is a small child. So when we are 4 or 5 years, as a child, we don't have that freedom, right? We're always dependent on others.
Right.
And there is no sense of responsibility. We can do whatever we want. But if the child thinks that that itself is the reality, then I don't have the freedom, I don't have the freedom. If it keeps thinking like that, then where do we end up? But actually, it's not unreal. As the child grows up, as we grow up, we get that freedom. And with that freedom, again, there is a sense of responsibility. And in that phase, we get to make a lot of choices, a lot of thing, and we might end up enjoying few things, and we also might end up with pain or sorrow. But if we think that this itself is reality, then again, that is also wrong, because reality is something which doesn't change. He gave the reference of secret doctrine, right? Omnipresent, boundless, eternal.
Right.
If we read that sentence, it's very easy. It's like we can read it in 2 minutes, but if you get into each word, omnipresent, eternal, boundless, and we think on all that, then we really understand the meaning of real. It's not something which comes and goes, or it is not something that it is born and dead. It is something which is there always. And when we have all that perspective, and we think that the pain or sorrow or the joy that we are enjoying at this moment is not real, it's much beyond than what our understanding of realness
Yeah,
is.
maybe we should say ultimate reality.
Yeah.
Use that ultimate reality also. As long as we are here, it may seem real. In the astral plane, whatever is happening is all maybe real in that plane. That is the explanation, I think, given in the book also. Like Aditya also said, and talked about it. It was very nice.
Yeah, thanks, Aditya. When I felt, means myself and Aditya, maybe we have a difference of like 12 to 15 years in age, but the kind of clarity in the thought, the way he presents, and when I think it's much beyond what we used to do when we were in his age, right? That clarity, that kind of clarity,
True.
it's good that people like you are there to come and present in such forums, and I would like more people of your generation to come forward and bring your thoughts and your understanding on such subjects, because that gives a different perspective. Youngsters, the way you think, the way you approach such subjects, it opens up different. It brings in questions to others also, not just of your age, but even seniors. It also brings in a different kind of questions, more deeper understanding to whatever being discussed. I think, yeah, in that aspect, I would like to thank you once again on behalf of everybody for taking up the session today and giving such insights, examples, etc.
Thanks a lot for the opportunity, because I thought I might not do the justice, because it's a very heavy subject. And each of the paragraph when I was reading the book, I felt this in itself is very deep. So I thought what to include, what to omit. But yeah, somehow I managed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way you answered also.
So we'll close the session with the Shanti Mantra today. Request everybody to close your eyes 30 seconds, then we'll go ahead with the Shanti Mantra. Om Sarve Sukhinas Santu Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you. Raji, shall we
So
stop the
the session is we are going to close the session now. and we will meet next Sunday with the new topic is the meditation video of Jai Krishnamurti. So till then, bye and happy Sunday to all of you.
Thank you. Namaste all. Bye.